Greetings, fellow travelers, explorers, independent thinkers, and seekers alike, and welcome to The Nexus. On this episode, we have recurring cosmological consultant Jeff Harmon to help us make sense of that which is going on all over the planet from an astrological, astronomical, and plutonic perspective, because you didn't realize how powerful a tiny little rock like Pluto can be. So we'll be exploring the plutonic power of pandemics in astrology with Jeff Harmon. For those of you listening to the show on Odyssey One, you will get the first hour. If you would like to join the simulcast over on YouTube and the live chat, then you can find it at Professor Bauer, and we'll be simulcasting live with an additional uninterrupted program. So you know what to do. Grab your favorite libation, get into that comfy spot, relax and breathe, and have a think as we explore the astrological power of plutonic pandemics. See you on the other side.
But one of the things that I saw that really seemed to show up on this particular pandemic and other ones is the lunar mansions of here, I'll show you if I can get this to work here. The lunar mansions of the moon. You can actually see here on the screen, these are two lunar mansions. This is Arudra or Ardra. Some people call it Ardra, but it's really Arudra, on one of the spellings. And Mula, the north node Rahu, is in, right now it's in Gemini, and there's 4 divisions or 4 padas in here. These two, every time these get mixed up, there's definitely a lot of trouble in the world. And these actually were very close to that around 9/11, but this one is more severe because of Rahu and Ketu being, having all the planets in between them. And Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto, by the way, are there. In fact, here, if I show you in options, display options, most Vedic astrologers don't turn Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto on, but I'll turn them on just so we have them.
Hey, who doesn't want to be turned on, right?
Oh, there you go. So you can see here, there's Pluto, okay, there's Neptune, and there's Uranus right here. So all of these planets are in between the moon's north and south node. Now, why I think this pandemic is going to lessen itself, or it's going to peak out between now and the 3rd week of April, is because notice right here, the south node is in Mula. That's going to stay there until September. But the north node is going to leave this very destructive, both of these lunar mansions are very destructive. The combination seems to be really a problem. And I'll show you here. If I put on an animation, you're going to notice right now, Ardra is in the first pada. See all these numbers right here. These are called padas. What a pada is a division. There's 4 divisions in each of the nakshatras. The nakshatras are the lunar mansions. They're 13 degrees, 20 minutes apiece. So watch, as I go forward here, I'll just take it up to April 22nd. And you'll notice right here, on the 22nd, Ardra disappears with the south node, and Miragashi turns in. And what happens is, if I go back one, you see Ardra comes back in. So that shifts Rahu, the moon's north node, out of that destructive nakshatra, and it starts moving into a new lunar mansion, which in this case, I would say is probably going to lessen the pandemic. I don't think it's going to go away. It's probably going to peak out between now and then. The reason why this pada is actually very destructive, because you can see it's in Rahu, Rahu. That's what the RA means. See, this tells you Rahu is in its own nakshatra. It's very powerful. So Rahu is always associated with poisons. It's also associated with pandemics, toxicity, all that type of stuff. And you can feel it. I can feel it. Even though I don't have coronavirus, I've been really sick, and I really don't feel well. That's why I'm telling.
I got to jump in on that, because one of the things that's been quite fascinating, it's always hindsight, 2020. I mean, go look at the irony there. But when you look back and you've got data that you can examine, that's when you start finding all these little nuggets, and you go, I didn't see that then, or I didn't see it until we had enough data now. And one of the things that's been very fascinating to me, and I know a number of people, including myself, that went through some type of illness in December and January, and just
That's
before this
yep,
came out, right?
yep.
I had this deep, dry respiratory, um, just junk, and I could cough, but it wasn't coughing anything up, and it was constantly coughing.
Well,
And
they paint the
eventually,
skies with all these chemtrails too. That's been
well,
going
yeah,
on a while.
but it's interesting to me the number of people that I know and that I've heard have a very similar account. Scott Adams, the Dilbert cartoon guy, had brought it
Yeah,
up recently in one of his podcasts about. He says, January was not a good month for me, and I was not
you
feeling
bet.
well. I was tired all the time. There was other things going on, but he said, and I've talked to a number of people who felt the same way and had the same kind of thing.
Yep.
So I found that data point to be very interesting because, at least from the symptom, chest infection, and
Yep.
it's like it was a pain in the ass.
Well, here's what's interesting too is notice the American media. I think, see now, Arudra kicked in way back at the end of September. Rahu went into that very malefic lunar mansion way back at the end of September, beginning of October. I think this whole situation in China was probably manifest as far back as October, November, December. I'll bet it crescendo because this all kicked in right there. And what's interesting is not only do we have the lunar mansions in these very destructive mansions, but we also had the Kalasarpa Yoga. Now, that didn't actually form until, watch, February 25th is right when Mars crossed the moon's south node, known as Ketu, and entered that, or that began the Kalasarpa Yoga. Look at, here's the 24th of February, and Mars crossed the south node, additionally creating a Kalasarpa Yoga, which means all planets are between the moon's north node. Furthermore, these two mansions were exacerbating it, and Mars was in it. Here's the point. The media in this country went berserk right at that time. Prior to that,
You do that again.
I said, what's interesting is this coronavirus was known about in December, and that's when Trump stopped all of the travel from China in. But our media didn't jump on it until right here when Mars crossed the moon's south node and we created this Kalasarpa Yoga. The media went ballistic in this whole country. That's when it was panic, and everyone started going, oh my God, what are we going to do? So, and of course, now we've been in lockdown for weeks, and this doesn't break until when? May 27th. Watch, if I go forward a couple of months, and you can see the dates are right here where my cursor is. If I go forward to literally May 27th, what are you going to notice? Mercury. Well, first the moon shoots past the north node, but then Mercury goes past the north node, technically late on the 27th, breaking the Kalasarpa Yoga. I would prognosticate that this is going to be when things start to get back on track, is May and June. Why? Because the Kalasarpa Yoga is broken. More importantly, it won't come back until it does come back in the fall. So it could resurface in the fall. In fact, if you go forward, you'll notice things kind of do resurface in the fall. But I think overall it's going to be pretty good. See, the Venus and the Sun, it actually shows back up. I think it's right around the latter part of the year. Yeah, it comes back online about actually January of 2021. It comes back online again. So we could see it resurface again, but I think we're going to get back on track this summer. I really do. And let's hope that's correct. Let's hope the astrology is accurate, because, man, it was sure accurate when this took off.
So it looks like from an astrological perspective, there's these periods that we're in now that were the planetary changes and movements over the next, sounds like 6 to 8 weeks, transpires into a different energy that then
about April 22nd. I would think we're going to begin to hear some positive things. I don't know if it'll be that day, but that's the trigger point. Why? The North Node leaves that destructive mansion of Ardra. And then I think we're going to start seeing some maybe plans, and who knows, maybe they'll come through with some antidotes or things that are going to lessen this. and I think the peak will be over. And then as we get into the latter part of May, the Kalasarpa yoga is broken, and that's when I think we're going to begin to see society reassemble itself. I don't think the world's ever going to be the same after this. I mean, the debt that this is going to create is going to be colossal on a global scale. Colossal.
I think this is, back in December, I got to start talking about the knowledge apocalypse. And I said, the what? It's like the unveiling and the correct curated narrative across all things that we have been taught and know that we all basically function on and within.
Yeah.
At least the majority, from my research, the majority of them are either half-truths or bullshit or both. So, and we know from, pick a domain, a knowledge topic, whatever, everything, you can go into any one of those and you can find a whole bunch of shit that just needs to be re-examined, re-questioned, get some new answers, because it's clear that a lot of it has been manufactured, manipulated, or otherwise.
Sure.
Now having an event like this, where essentially, one of the ways I look at it is everybody's been told to go to your room, be quiet, sit there and contemplate your navel lint, whatever it is that you do, but stop. So you've had this this psychological meta pause on the meta mind. So you've got everybody had to stop, refocus, slow down, shut up, sit down, and look around. Now, when everybody, there's a great deal of people that are going on about the economic impact. Well,
it's huge.
I mean, that's obvious. There's no question that there's been a systemic reset. I mean, basically, we have a systems state change in that everything was doing one thing in 1 minute, and within a matter of minutes in the course of a time period, everything just stopped, or at least the majority of it. That's never happened in history that we know of. And
not any time that I've ever heard.
Right, and because
society lends it. I mean, look at this. I mean, if you go back to the Spanish flu in the early 18s, I mean, the only way you knew of a pandemic like this was to pick up a newspaper or hear if somebody got sick, and word of mouth. Now you have everyone so interconnected with all the smartphones, the media, the internet. I mean, it's. I think the further society goes, the more serpentining our own technology is going to benefit us, but also incarcerate us. It's interesting. 5G just came out over there by Wuhan, and it also seems to parallel the Spanish flu. Was also right about when radar was just coming on the, there's frequencies, like Wilhelm Reich had found, there's frequencies that match up with the blood. And it's eerie how the astronomy or astrology, however you want to say it, really seems to parallel these pandemics in various different ways. And I wonder if the 5G had something to do with that, where that also parallels in. I know it's a pathogen and all that, and a virus, but it's interesting how these things come together when technology advances.
I think frequency manipulation is a lot farther than it is publicly promoted, or in the way it's stated. Because if you think about it, it's going back to this, the whole idea of a cosmological creation. Everything is a frequency and a vibration. Tesla.
Yeah, it sure is.
Tesla called it, and when you think about how you can, if you can take like a sonogram, and you can use ultrasonics to point and destroy or change or alter or do surgery or something on a human body. Well, what is that? It's a frequency, right?
Yeah,
it's sound.
That's right.
So, there's a whole bunch of very interesting pieces of data about, how RNA and DNA can be affected through frequencies. And like you were just mentioning, they rolled out the 5G in Wuhan, it was interesting to see some of the reports. Apparently the original, I don't know, I think it was a Vodafone and a local service provider who had done the infrastructure and the rollout. And after, if I remember correctly, it was like after 2 or 3 months, they were complaining about how it wasn't working as well as they thought it should. And they were pointing to the particulate dust and pollution matter in the air as causing the interference.
Interesting stuff.
It's like, So the whole, nothing more than fifth generation, the frequency bands that they use. And apparently somewhere around that 60 hertz, there's a pretty good amount or wall, or it causes some disturbance in the outer wall of the cells when you get to that frequency.
Heard that, yeah.
It's like, okay, well, what are you guys using over there? Well, we're using everything from 20 to 100 millivolts. It's like, okay.
Right.
So here's a set of frequencies that you're inundating an organic, an environment filled with organic matter that apparently doesn't like this stuff. It doesn't do real well when it's.
Yeah, you're really cutting out a lot. I can barely hear you.
Yep, can you know?
Yeah, but you're cutting out a lot. There's a lot of breakup.
Yeah, but I'm just getting a little bit on your too. All right, so let's look at what do you got up here. You were talking about the frequencies.
Well, I mean, this is just a diagram, one of many, that talks about different frequencies of planets. And I mean, we could sit here and pick this all apart, but it's well known that, boy, it sounds like I'm really breaking up, huh? Can you hear me?
I got you now.
Okay. Yeah. There's a lot of data out there about frequencies, how they can be used for healings. They can also be used, I mean, the military knows this. You can make someone puke on the ground just from certain frequency combinations. And one of the things that's fascinating is the planetary vibrations all seem to have frequencies. But, you know, I started to say earlier how there is some very compelling information out there. The ancient biblical Enoch, which was also known as the Egyptian Thoth. And they talk about how when the heavens declare, in fact, this is in the Psalms, many places in Genesis, and I often get a lot of rebuke from religious people who say, oh, but the astrology is the work of the devil. Well, the heavens aren't the work of the devil. They're the work of God. And what's quite interesting about that is I have some really interesting old texts that talk about how these times are actually to purge a lot of different destructive energy that brings spirituality afterwards. So I'm not saying that, you know, it's good that anyone dies or gets sick.
That's one of the things I heard about the Pluto going into Capricorn. This time around, so your thoughts on this? Pluto obviously has some destructive, negative influence and characteristics to it's what it does and throughout time, at least, you know, from what we've seen.
Sure.
But I've also seen where Pluto is also a part of a rebirth, a reset.
Yeah, it's transformation and rebirth.
Yep. Yeah. So how does that apply to what we're seeing here? I think if that's the case, then at least from what you're saying and what I'm saying, and I think many others are feeling, this, although it may be painful, this is a really good thing with good stuff on the other side.
Yeah, I think, well, too, and then the other thing I would say, in addition to Pluto, is the biggest thing that's going on that I see is the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction. The Saturn-Jupiter conjunction is about to happen on the winter solstice of 2020, which is this year. And that's what I've been talking about forever. And I really have to say, this is where tropical and sidereal astrology come together quite elegantly, because what happens is a siderealist or someone using Vedic astrology will say, yeah, but that's not happening in a new sign in in sidereal astrology, and it's actually not. They happen right in an air sign in the tropical system. I'm having a hard time to get my computer to share here. There we go. Now I might be able to get it to work. We'll see if I can get it to share. There we go. So you can actually see here on the screen that this is a tropical system that I just put up here. And again, the ancients, and why I brought up Enoch, who also was referred to as the Egyptian Thoth. And then later, believe it or not, it was Abu Mashar, who was a Muslim / Jewish astrologer. It's a very interesting story, who seemed to divide the myth of Hermes Trismegistus from the Egyptian Thoth and the biblical Enoch, which talked about the usage and the combinations of both the sidereal and the tropical systems. Well, the tropical systems sure seem to show when things happen. Well, the winter solstice of 2020 actually is when we have the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. And here, I'll show you this right here. It's actually the 21st, literally, of 2020 is when the two join up. And people might say, okay, well, great. What does that mean? Well, this is happening in what we call the first degree of a tropical air sign. And this makes like a Star of David. So, and every 20 years, there'll be this conjunction again in an earth sign of Taurus, or it may happen over in of course, the next earth sign, which is Capricorn. So it pings around. I'm sorry, it'll do it in the air sign of Gemini, and then it'll do it in the air sign of Libra. So these make like a triangular Star of David in these different, what we call elements, earth, air, fire, and water. Well, it's starting the air sign. Now, a lot of people might think this is the quote unquote age of Aquarius, which that's not the same. See, astrology has many complex components to it. I think that ingress into Aquarius in the progressions of the equinoxes, I wish I had my computer to share better here, but it would, I could show you, we've been in the quote unquote age of Pisces for about 2,100 years. That's going to move in, I think, when the Hebrew calendar ends. That's my personal opinion. I'm not saying I'm 100% right, but I think when the Hebrew calendar runs out, and that's about 240 something years from now, is when we're going to ingress as our solar system into the Aquarian age. However, this Saturn-Jupiter conjunction that's happening here in Aquarius, I think is really a big deal, because this is going to usher in, there's a lot of secrets to the meanings of these signs. Aquarius actually has 4 juts to it, which means the 4 modalities of transportation. So we're going to see, not only do we walk, we drive, we fly, but I think psychic work is going to come in a lot more. Intuition and consciousness is going to expand, as well as hard 3D technologies. So we're going to see this next 240 years, which is, I think, the final epoch of the progression of the sun, finishing Pisces and going truly into the Aquarian age. This is a major leap in technologies. I think a lot of suppressed things that have happened, advances in medicine, advances in transportation, energy. We may actually see some of this zero-point energy that Tesla had discovered come on play. And it's interesting, this whole crash of the economy that would have probably happened had not this reset that they're about to do happen. And there's a lot of conspiracy theories floating around on the web right now about, hey, did the coronavirus get created? Was it released? Was it, the military? Was it the Black Ops? Was it China? There's all these things floating around. One thing's for sure, we were at a critical point financially, and I don't think there's anything that's going to cause a reset more than this. This is a global pandemic. And I mean, yeah, the Congress might have just voted in $2.2 trillion. I'll bet by the time this is done, this could be 6 to 10 trillion in the U.S. on cruise control. And I'll bet it'll be over 100 million globally.
So what do you think about?
And I'm guessing.
I mean, when you think about it, if you're going to reset anything, the best way to do is to stop whatever it's doing.
Yeah.
Do the upgrades.
Throw a wrench in the machine and let's rebuild it.
And then turn it back on, right?
Mhm.
And hopefully your software upgrades aren't going to, cause a whole bunch
I don't
of
think it
problems.
was the U.S. military that did this. I would be surprised if China did it. However, I wouldn't be surprised if, like George Carlin mentions, the owners had something to do with this, meaning the bankers way behind the scenes. Because, man, for 30 years, we've known this has been colossal.
I heard a week or two ago that, in fact, it might have been about a month ago, that somebody had put forth the idea, and it blows me away because back in the 90s, I remember when we was in my corporate career, things were going crazy. We were doing IPOs. We were traveling all over the planet. It was like this really amazing time to get out and make stuff happen. And yet we still had, the conversation about national debt. And I remember, there was a couple of things that happened that caused various financial angst in some various sectors. But for the most part, during the 90s, if you were engaged, everything was moving ahead and it was great. But, occasionally this national debt would come up and we got to do something about the debt. Well, here's my observation. Apparently the debt matters to people, but not enough to do anything about it. And that is a general thing. I mean, you can get all wanked up about it, but unless you have something where you can affect it materially and with some kind of demonstrable, repeatable, defendable approach, apparently it's just going to keep being what it is and going the way it's going. However, if you were going to say, we're going to change the entire system, we've already got kind of a roadmap. We've mapped derivatives and debt to these imaginary ones and zeros, and it's all psychological value anyway. So back then in the 90s, I was thinking, why don't they just do a Jubilee, right? Just everything just gets zipped like they did back in, in the...
This is likely what's going to be happening.
Ago, right?
See, this is why I like this Saturn-Jupiter conjunction coming in, because if there was ever going to be what you're saying, like a Shemitah, forgiveness every 7 years of debt or 49 years of debt, this certainly would be it. And I think something else has happened here too. I think there's a war going on literally, and there's a reason the U.S. ships are paralleling the Pacific and the Atlantic right now, and they're really increasing the military presence. I don't think it's just the drug lords. I also think it's a presence. I think this was also a way to restructure the power. China was getting pretty powerful, and I'm not trying to say this is a conspiracy, because a lot of people are saying this, that, the United States caused this coronavirus. I don't believe that.
Jeff,
I think the bankers would.
Arguments that make
I think the bankers
China
would.
did it to themselves.
You never know.
I mean,
one thing's for sure. I hear about the wet markets and the bats and all this stuff,
which are real. That's some nasty stuff going on.
It's some nasty stuff. The only thing I can say is I've had interrogations put to me saying, geez, Jeff, is this or this, that? And I'm not one to start conspiracy theories, but I'll tell you what the chart says. I consistently see that there's some very shady stuff that was connected to this, that I can't put any fingers directly. It doesn't look like it was the U.S., and it doesn't look like it was directly China, but it looks like it was somebody gave this a little help. Mm-hmm. So, and we've heard about black ops. We've heard about the shadow, quote unquote, governments, and I don't think it's even the deep state. I think it's, again, it all points to the upper bankers, and no one will ever know who they are. There's rumors right now that Trump has taken over the Federal Reserve. I'm sure you've heard that rumor.
Well, that's not a rumor.
Yeah. Well,
last Friday when he did that executive order, they folded the Fed into the Treasury.
I've heard that. And, you
look at that and you go...
But you can bet the boys behind that are still involved.
Oh, yeah. That's one of the things that I think is, when people talk about the swamp, right?
Yeah.
What basically my understanding and the way I look at it is the swamp is made up of a bunch of career people who have been implemented, put in, stayed much longer than their welcome and their original intent by multiple different ideologies through different administrations. But you've got career bureaucrats and law enforcement and judicial, and these people, they got infiltrated. You had this progressive mindset that has just been pervasive across all of society. You know, it doesn't matter, entertainment, media, corporate. I mean, you have, and particularly in the academic side of it, you've got this mentality that, I mean, it's not hard to go map it back to Alinsky and the progressive project started under Wilson, and you can see where these, you know, data points are common, and the directionality and going, you know, that they've been pushed. And what's happened, and this goes back to the point I was making about this idea of this knowledge apocalypse. People have been told shit. You and I have been around for several decades, and we are a part of that indoctrination, or at least in that guided evolution, right? And I know the stuff that I was told when I was young. By the time I got 10, 20 years down the road, I was like, I don't think so. Yeah. Y'all ain't telling me everything. And you've got some things that I've went and looked at all ass backwards.
You know, the internet's just just absolutely abreast with everybody espousing some conspiracy theory. And I can't, there's so many viewpoints. No one knows what the truth is. I mean, you know, we're hearing stories that they're rounding up children out of underground bases. There's all these explosions. The good guys in the white hats, you know, Guantanamo is going to be filled any minute with all the bad guys. I got to say, this more points towards follow the money. That's what I get. The charts that I have cast more seem to say this is about a global reset, and it's a good reason to do it. And I think what is positive, if I'm correct in my analysis of the astrology, which I hope I am, I think this Kalasarpa yoga is going to break again right at the end of May into June. We're going to start to get back on track, and we're going to see some mighty, mighty creative financial redirection. And the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction is going to usher in not only a new era, but I think a whole new global system. I think we're right around the corner from it.
I mean, how can you not take advantage of this set of circumstances?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't care what level.
No matter how
you could go from the top,
no matter how it started, right?
All of the bottom, it doesn't matter. Taking advantage of a global pause and a global correction, a global reset on all things. I mean, literally from toilet paper all the way to the internet, right?
Right.
So,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, there is nothing that anybody looks at right now the same. And there's more coming.
This is going to change the world indelibly, and that's what Saturn Jupiter conjunctions do.
I mean, Saturn Jupiter. We're participating. I mean, how awesome is that?
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. You know, a lot of folks have been postulating Donald Trump. You know, I would say that. You know, you here, let me just see if I can make the screen sharing work here. Donald Trump, I think he's going to win. For people who hate him, get used to it. I think he's going to be around. And for the people that love him, you're going to be very happy. I have to be careful what I say because Priuses will surround my house and throw bricks through my window if I'm not careful.
Those people, I thought that
they'll say namaste when they do.
Those. Didn't they ban the Prius because they found out that you couldn't clean them well enough so they transmit germs?
Oh, I don't know. I haven't found that one out yet. But you can see here on the screen, this is actually Donald Trump's chart. And one of the things that Donald Trump has for the first time in 18 years, he is going to have this fall his nodal conjunction. That means his north node is going to join his north node, and his south node, because they're together, are going to join. I think this is going to fuel him. In fact, you can see that actually happens for him when right about there. right before the election. It'll be sometime late in September is when that happens. Yeah, it's right about there. So yeah, it's right at the beginning of October. I think this fuels him. He also has other transits that are very powerful in Jaimini astrology that seems to support. You see, another thing too, Trump has been in something called Sadi Sate. Sadi Sate is a very strange term. Here, I'll put it on the screen for you. Sadi Sate is the 7.5-year period during which Saturn transits the sign before the moon, the sign during the moon, and the sign after the moon. So what's interesting, Trump completes that when right here about October. I'm sorry, it ends, according to this, it's ending right about the end of June, beginning of July of 2017. I'm sorry, of this year. It'll be actually, no, it actually ended this January. I stand corrected. Yeah, it's this January 24th. Trump ends, which it's over. So it just ended about a month and a half ago. So he's out of Sadi Sate, which I think you're going to find it's going to make a big change in how he is reviewed or revered in the public, even though he's got half the media, or actually 3/4 of the media, attacking him consistently. I think we're going to find when all this is over, this is going to bring a big shift for him. He's going to get more power and more things done because of this. Sadi Sate is always a very karmic time. And even though he became president for it, the fact that that's right, what am I thinking of? Saturn has left sidereal Sagittarius and gone into Capricorn right in the third week of January of this year, almost exactly when the Saturn-Pluto conjunction happened. So this is a pivotal time that I think is going to end up benefiting him a lot. And I think he's probably going to find his next term is going to be much more powerful than his first term.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, the choices and what's going on out there, we've only got a few that, we're ever presented with. This particular,
it's going to take a lot of Red Bull and a few IVs to get Biden to make it to the election.
And it's amazing to me that, Trump, when you look at what's been proffered for the political realm on, the ideological sides for who's got the better ideas and is going to run the ship, I've just found it fascinating to watch it unfold into three old Muppets as the choices, right?
Yep. I still say Durham is going to come through. That whole thing is right around the corner. I think we're going to see a lot of prosecutions come through with Durham and Barr. This thing is not done yet. I think it's going to explode. And that is more where I see this ultimately happening all during this election year. It's going to be an incredible year. Year.
Can we cast an interrogation on a question for or regarding the election and just make it something that's very
well, I've done many of those already, but what would be your question?
Well, one of the things that I'm curious about is and I'm thinking about how to phrase this, and it's basically, will we have more of an electronic election than a ballot election, or a regular paper one? Meaning, the change that has happened. I mean, think about it from just on this pandemic, and one of the major changes that's coming in front of us. Anything made of paper, anything having to do with a surface package, your whole relationship with it has changed.
Yeah.
So, and when we think about money, the fiat physical currency, I mean, that's the first thing that goes. It can go anywhere.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of rumors about that.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like, well, the kind of things maybe we should think about not using that, because we can't, at least with the way that it's defined now, we can't control the spread of it by particularly using paper products or whatever, and passing that around. passing shit around is what got us here in the first place. I mean, if you can think about it that way, but you're not going to be passing money. So when you think about it from the election perspective, you know, the great go out and vote, go to the booth, hit the button, press the stuff. Are we going to have an unusual election from the way that votes are done?
Leans more towards it will still be traditional. It may be just paced a little bit. I think it leans more towards traditional.
So we'll
But
have
they may do a little bit of the pacing and social distancing and timing of people coming in and out. I don't think they're going to allow people to do it electronically from home. No, it looks more like it stays traditional. I think Trump's going to win this election even more solidly now than he would have before, even though the media is hammering away on him.
Well, the media has lost just about all credibility that if any, that they have.
Well, it depends
and
who you talk to.
Worse. I mean,
it is, but you would be surprised at how many people buy this stuff. If you only watch certain media channels, like if you only watch CNN, you're going to hate Trump. You will hate Trump because the entire agenda is to hate Trump. That's all it does. It's the same thing with MSNBC, Rachel Maddow. I mean, no matter if you turn on any of those stations, you're going to hate Trump. If you turn on Fox or the other channels that are different than that, which is pretty much only Fox, you're going to have a totally different opinion. But I see families so divided right now. There is so much divisiveness going on. And you see it in the White House briefings. I mean, they want to stop carrying Trump, you know, and other than Fauci and Dr. I forget what her name is.
Yeah, Brits.
Yeah, it's Bricks or something like that,
Bricks, yeah.
Which are two great. You know, it's great that they have them on there. But literally, this is I've never seen. I mean, let's face it, we don't have reporters anymore. We have teleprompter readers. We have agenda shapers. That's what they are.
Yeah.
The days of Walter Cronkite, they're long gone. Remember
Peter
that?
Jennings.
Peter Jennings,
I remember
Koppel.
when Ted Koppel came out that night.
Around,
that was the one of the wars or something, wasn't it? It was Entebbe or something where he came on and did that show that night, and that launched that show.
Yeah.
Now, so let's ask another question.
Yeah, it leans more towards the traditional.
Okay, so here's the question: will the date change?
Yeah. Well, I know everyone's citing that Mercury is retrograde on the day of the election. Okay, right. That often can indicate recounts.
But the date of the election won't change? But there's no chance of it moving for some reason, like still having an election, but
we're still going to have an election like it is. Yeah, that's the chart would kind of confirm that. Yep. I think it may be paced where people are not. You know, I think we're going to get over this social distancing sooner or later as the virus subsides. It may come back again next year. We may have a smattering of it next year. Okay, because that Kalasapa yoga shows up again. So but the lunar mansions are not going to be as severe as they were this year. See, that's the big change. See, that Mula lunar mansion actually leaves this September into October, which is good. So that destructive energy is dissipating starting in April, much more so in summer. But then the south node, which is Ketu, leaves that destructive lunar mansion of Mula in September. And that's going to make a big difference.
Okay, so here's a question.
Yeah.
Will okay.
That's right.
Which will mitigate the virus more, a vaccine or a medication?
I would lean towards a medication based on this chart. And that's already manifest from what I'm hearing. You know, the orderly precepts don't want to admit it, but this drug, I forget what it's called.
Hydroxychloroquine.
That's it, right? For
and the azithromycin,
malaria,
which is an antibacterial, right?
You bet. And you know, I want to be careful what I say here, but I personally believe we could bolster our immune systems with a lot of wonderful herbs. I mean, lemon water alone is amazing. Pineapple is amazing.
Vitamin C.
It's cloves, vitamin C.
And that's
I love. What is it? What's that?
This is one of the data points interesting to me is that what it takes a fully functioning and supported immune system is a massive awareness and awakening for a whole bunch of people. I mean, toilet paper and washing your hands, it's like, okay, yeah, welcome to the 20th century, but you need to think about these other aspects of what's going on, because when you look at at least the data we've got now, and I think there's a lot of obfuscation with the data. I think it's incomplete data. I think some of it's done on purpose because they don't know, and some of it's they're doing on purpose because they do know.
I mean, it's good that they're doing what they're doing, but
I tend to agree with that.
Yeah, but on the other hand, it's a very convenient thing to have happen right now to cause a global reset.
I mean, how about piggyback?
It's a great coincidence, yeah.
Right? Don't let a good crisis go to waste. I mean, there you go. Let's go in, and I think there's
olive leaf extract. I wanted to mention olive leaf extract along with oregano oil, especially the wild oregano oil. Oh my God, that's powerful. I've been taking it. I've been quite sick lately myself. That's why I've been really laying low, and I've got some very heavy transits and progressions, and I find it has really helped me a lot. I think I would have been much sicker had I not been taking this stuff. Now, I'm not going to say this is going to cure corona. No, by no means am I saying that. I am just saying I think our individual awareness of ways to strengthen our immune system, and there's many herbs out there that can do that. I have a lot of clients who are doctors, and I've spoken to naturopaths about this. They're like, yeah, man, oregano oil combined with olive leaf extract and many other herbs can bolster the immune system tremendously. You know, now I only say that because I kind of want to cover myself that I'm not in any way prescribing medicine or talk, because I don't want to get into that. I don't need any lawsuits because, boy, you'll get them. But I want to say I think people should look into either their doctor or their healthcare practitioner or whoever their herbalist is into these things. I've also heard and seen myself with some, I've got some clients who are amazing herbalists in the Chinese medicine. And again, I love naturopathic doctors. These are MDs who know the pharmaceutical world, and they also know the herbal world. Right. Because again, people have to be careful. If you mix pharmaceutical with herbs and some of these very strong things, especially if you're elderly, it can kill you.
So it's, like we did back in the 70s when we
right, it can kill you. So I always tell people, check. Yeah, but check with your doctor, because if you're on meds, don't combine herbs or any of these things. You know, check with the doctor first. But I can tell you, herbs and apothecary are amazing, especially if you do it under the proper guidance and you do it with
everybody's got their own frequency and balance, and you've got to find the components that resonate well with, you know, optimizing the frequency of your own carbon-based meat suit. Hey, I've got another question.
Carbon-based meat suit, I like that.
I've got another question. So will the majority party change in the House with this election?
Yes, likely. Yep. And which way is it going to change? I think they may take the House, the Republicans. That's what it's looking like here.
That would indicate then a change in the majority of the house.
Yep.
Which is,
it leans in that. See, the 10th house is the government. The 11th is its judicial branches, or you could say it's the House. It would be the House and the Senate. Leans towards a change, towards a more favorable. Yeah, I think the Democrats are going to take a hit this year. That's what I think. And again, I'm not being partisan here. I'm not being.
Just looking at the data.
I'm just looking at the data. That's what it leans towards.
Here's an interrogation. Here's a question. What does it say? And
one of the things I hope
posed it so that it was as neutral as possible, because it's going to change. It's either going to stay the same or it's going to change. It's going to be a system state change.
It looks like a change,
other, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so well, let's continue down this path. Will Joe Biden be the opponent to Donald Trump in the election?
Well, I don't know if I can see that. I've often been wondering if they're not warming up Cuomo to bring him in.
I can see the chatter.
I don't think it's going to happen.
A trial balloon to see if they can get somebody else that's close, but I don't think Cuomo. I don't think he wants to do it. He could get.
He sure enjoys being on TV. I can tell you that.
But I think they're going to prop. My sense is they're going to prop Biden up and just let him.
That's more what it leans towards. But Biden's weak here, man. He's weak.
I mean, he's decomposing every time you see him. And it's not. I'm not trying to be mean or cruel or anything. I just look at him and go, if you were my grandfather, we would have had a talk a while back.
You're right.
And if you didn't listen, we'd be having more talks. We're saying, look, Gramps, this is just not happening. You can wish and, stare at the pond and see someone else in the reflection all you want. Mm-hmm. It ain't happening.
No, it's hard for me to see that one clearly, but I would say it more leans towards
someone else than Biden.
No, they're going to try someone else, but I don't think it's going to fly. I really don't. Bernie, I think he's clearly not going to make the nomination. He doesn't have the delegates. I think they're going to end up running. This is why I think Trump, I made the comment a while back. The only thing I can see here is Trump looks like he's a freight train going through a wet paper bag winning this election. He just looks like he wins. Nothing's going to stop him. And there's your answer right there.
Yeah.
I don't think it matters who they stack up against him. I think he wins.
Or how, whatever those things are, he's going to blow right through. Make sure I'm
right here. 7, 8, 9 A's in his 9th house. He's going to take it. And I know a lot of astrologers are saying Mercury's retrograde in the ballot day. That often does mean recounts and stuff like that. It often means errors. It often means data manipulation. It's not a good omen to have Mercury retrograde.
Well, unless all of that is pointing to those who lose, bringing all that up and having all those problems and using them as a some kind of hesitation, questioning, delay tactic, because there is nothing left. And that's one of those other
Mercury stations. Mercury Station's November 2nd.
Let
me just come back here. Well, see, and this is another thing. Yeah, see, astrologers have been, they got to look at more detail, because let me show you. Mercury actually stations and goes retrograde October 13th. So the worst condition of Mercury is when it's in what we call its occidental phase. It's going into the sun. So Mercury conjuncts the sun October 25th, but Mercury isn't going retrograde on the election day. It's stationing and going direct. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
So there's a big difference. That's why I would say I think this election flies. I do, because see, and a lot of astrologers say, oh, Mercury's going to be retrograde during the election. Actually, no, it's stationing and going direct. And it's in what we call its oriental phase. It's in its most positive phase, Whenever a planet stations and it's about to go direct, that means things go forward. So I would indicate here he wins, and I would say it's probably not a recount.
Okay, so going back to where we were.
So I don't want to say anything against any other astrologers because
Well,
they're all out there trying to make a living,
Hey,
but they
you know
got to
what?
be detailed. You got to astrology is in the details. If there was ever a place that you wanted to be exceedingly detailed, it's an analysis of a chart.
Yeah, and I, so here's one of my things I've just been getting. I get hammered on it by a bunch of purists, but I'm enjoying the daily new data, which is simply delicious, about how inaccurate and wrong experts are and have been on a regular basis. And one of the things that I consider myself an expert in a number of different knowledge domains, and I will sit there and I can defend my position, I can use data, I can modify it, I can go along, but there are certain things that I know a lot about, and that turns out to be classified as being an expert. However,
Right.
the people that are out there that are propped up, and I don't go
Right.
propping myself as an expert, but the people that are out there in various disciplines of knowledge, and the media and all these other things, economics and all this, you've got a shitload of experts. And these experts are hauled on to a TV screen and they're asked about their opinion on what they think the
Right.
correct, what the situation on that analysis is,
Sure.
what they think should have been done, which is always great. Everybody's got a should have. Oh yeah, that was the best thing to do. Should have done it earlier. It's like, okay, what genius was out there at that right moment in time that you've delineated saying this is what you should be doing? None of you. So to me, that's loser think. If you're going to drop into that mode, you're just not, all you're trying to do is prop up your own lack of bullshit, whatever that is. But my point is that everybody who's an expert, pick whatever you want. All they are is consultants. A doctor is a consultant.
Well, and they're getting paid too. They're all getting paid.
But they're consultants. They are paid to come in and proffer their expertise and their knowledge and their wisdom, just like you and me, doing whatever it is that people pay us to do. Mm-hmm. But the ones that are out there that are prognosticating and predicting and doing all this hindsight poaching of, you should have done this, you should have thought that, all this other crap. The preponderance of these people that are put out there in front of us, majority of them are wrong most of the time.
Yeah, a lot.
And it does 10 minutes of research to go look at Jack Krugman's on economics, Thomas Friedman. These guys they're paid a lot of money to spew their opinions, and they're always wrong. Now,
well, if there was ever a time that I would see that the world was in change, I've been saying this for a decade. I'm not saying I'm right or anything like that, but I can tell you, I remember being on Coast to Coast, Fade to Black, on so many other shows, Veritas with Mel Fabregas, and many others. And they were always saying to me, well, what do you think the astrology shows for the Mayan calendar? What do you think it shows for this? What do you think it shows for that? And I said, I can't come up with a damn thing. Am I cutting out?
No, you're good. Go ahead.
Okay, good. Because there's a lot of glitching on the speakers. So the point I wanted to make is that I have always said, if the astronomy is correct, I mean, right now is it. I mean, the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, if you go back through history, I mean, the Roman Empire officially kind of dissolved on that. I went back literally almost 2,000 years looking at these conjunctions, and there was always a very strong aspect or change in society. For instance, Saturn-Pluto opposition was 9/11. Saturn-Pluto square was the bank crashing in 2008 and 2009. So things get to a level of stress where it's like the camel, the back was broke by the extra straw, right? Even though it was stressing. So this is right where we're at. And it's interesting, the virus was what precipitated this whole event, but what it's really precipitating is a colossal change. It's going to happen in the financial system. What I like about the end of the story is the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction that's coming up this December on the winter solstice, I think is going to bring in solutions that are going to be amazing. That's why I think there's a happy light at the end of the tunnel. I don't think we're all going to wind up dead, though it's sad to see people die. But people, I mean, I'm not making light of this, but 50 million were documented in the Spanish flu. They guesstimate up to 100 million. 35,000 people a year die in the US alone, or approximately, from the flu. So I'm not demeaning the coronavirus, but I mean, when you look at the numbers, it was nowhere near where some of the other pandemics have been.
Yeah, and Jeff, I'm glad you brought that up, because I'm going to share this little screen here, this little chart, because
yeah, show some of those pictures
always,
you were showing earlier. That was great stuff.
It's always about context of the content, right?
Oh, this is great. Yeah.
So when you have the metrics is what makes the difference. So it's how it's what you're measuring, and what's that old famous thing? If you can't measure it, you can't manage it, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And I think the psychology, that's one of the things that I'm finding very fascinating with this whole thing as it unfolds, is it really seems to be an information problem masqueraded as a medical problem that has been focused on, that's focused everybody's psychology. Meaning that, the data that's coming out, at least in the numbers, and like I said earlier, I think the numbers are manipulated, mangled, and for both competent and incompetent reasons.
Yeah.
But the numbers aren't working. And in this citizen journalism, independent researcher world, that the net and this digital way in which we can get to everything, it's changed the way in which people are getting their data, and then vetting that data, right?
That's right.
So
But in a lot of ways, this reminds me of Nostradamus's comments in one of his quatrains, is that he saw, as society advanced, particularly in later times, that everyone would be coded, everyone would be literally documented in the nth degree, and few would like their places.
Right. Yeah. Everybody wants to benefit from it, but they, it's almost kind of like a musical chairs thing. They're all trying to figure out, where can I find a seat now?
Sure.
Which brings me to this image that I just put up now. I think, once we get through all of is it a medical, or a medicine versus a vaccine cure? Is it a combination of that and a whole bunch of new societal norms of, shaking hands, doing the handshake? Do we use cash? What are the modes of which we change the transactional side of how we do things, but we still continue to do them? And I think that's one of the things that people, we're seeing it unfold as far as tests, and people are trying to figure out, what the hell do we do now? But we're seeing it in a way that is a positive change from old norms, that some just needed to be gotten rid of, some just needed to be modified, and some, hell, we didn't even think about doing it that way. So that transformation is what I think is happening as we're watching, in this transformative possibilities of doing as much as you can remotely. I mean, it's just like you and I doing this, having this conversation, doing the show, right?
Yeah.
We're
sitting almost 1,000 miles apart. Right?
We're 1,000 miles apart, and we're doing everything over radio frequency.
Yep, we sure are.
Essentially, right?
Show some of those pictures that you showed me earlier with the mask, because that was so informative. People love to see that. I really like that.
I don't think people realize how much of what we're doing was is almost, it's 100 and
Yeah, 102 years ago,
102
these
years
pictures
ago.
are precisely, look at that. You can see the soldier wearing a mask. And then as you page through the rest of those were amazing. I don't know if you can actually do a
Oh, yeah.
page or if you have to redo it every time. Yeah, there you go. Look at that.
Right. So you look at these.
It's 102 years ago. That's the Spanish flu.
Yeah. And I mean, they got some great masks, and it looks like that's what they're making there.
Yeah. Look at that. That's Seattle police. So nothing new.
Nothing new. It's
look at that. Wear a mask or go to jail.
We even have that going on now, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, here we are 102 years later. I think the difference is we have social media and all the communications devices to get us more tuned in so we arrest this quicker. And even though everyone is wanting to blame Trump for this, I think he acted quite early in stopping people coming from and closing the border is intelligent. I mean, you're going to reduce the spread of this. That's ubiquitous among all medical professionals if you keep people at a distance or stop them from coming in proximity.
Well, and that's the whole idea of.
Look at that. The baseball players have got masks on. Amazing. Is it great where you found these pictures? I don't know.
But they're still out playing.
They're still out playing, yeah.
Right.
Yep. And look at that. 102 years ago, we had a pandemic that killed, they postulate it could be 100 million people. If that's the case, the human race survived. You know, it's interesting that you, and thanks for showing these pictures. These are great pictures. The thing that I also wanted to point out, if I read you the ancient Vedantic text, that's a great picture, I love that, about the lunar mansions that the north and south nodes are in right now, called Rahu and Ketu, they are all about this. It's transformation, destruction with a new ascension. It has to bring its destruction in order to bring something new in. Isn't that interesting?
One of the things that I was finding very fascinating in this whole aspect of when you go back and you look at, where is Pluto when shit goes down?
Yep.
Okay.
Well, it's the Pluto-Saturn conjunction that really crescendos this.
Right.
It's the aspects Pluto's getting made to Saturn that really seems to show up.
Right. But Pluto seems to be a mischief mofo, and shit goes down when Pluto is hanging out with somebody. But
yep, that's right.
There's also the yin-yang of Pluto, which is this reset, restart, rebirth. Once it comes in and it makes a mess, yep, then it's just like, so at the end of we had at the end of the Spanish flu, right, we had the roaring 20s. Shit went crazy.
Yeah, it did.
Back in,
I think we're going to have the roaring 20s again. I really do.
I think it's going to be the soaring 20s.
It probably will be. That's the Saturn Jupiter conjunction. It's going to usher in new innovations, new technologies, and ascensions. And I'd encourage everyone to be positive. Yes, this is very difficult. Yes, it's very saddening to have, people get sick like this, and even much more saddening to lose people. But, this has always been the case. Thank God we're not in a major war. Thank God we're not in a position where people are dying in super masses, even though this is not good to have anyone die. The thing that I always love to show, let me see if I can find this diagram.
Well,
and this speaks to Pluto.
None of us are going to get out of here alive, so,
Nope.
It's your
well, that's
time.
right. Nobody gets out of here alive. That's never, ever.
It's your time, and, hopefully you've gotten as much done in this iteration as possible so that you don't have to go through it again in the next one.
Here's one of my favorite diagrams to show people. And people think astrology is, the work of the devil. Well, actually, it's the work of the divine. Every glyph of every planet comes out of the circle, the crescent, and the cross. The circle could be likened to God's divine energy. The dot in the middle could be, you could say, God or infinity, whatever you like. The circle of life is everything on this planet starts out as a beginning. It grows, it matures, it atrophies, and it dies. It's like a 3-act stage play. It has a beginning, middle, and end. So the sun or the circle could be likened to creation or the never-ending generative forces. The moon is the crucible. Now you can see here on this picture, of course, that's right where the mother's womb would be, right? Or you could say reproductive organs. So the seed is put into the womb, just like the seed from the farmer is put into the ground. And of course, where does it come out? Between mother's feet. And of course, the 4 elements, also earth, air, fire, and water, or the 4 archangels, or also you could liken the cross to sunrise, noon, sunset, midnight. It's the physical world. Well, watch. All the glyphs of the planets come from the cross, the circle, or the crescent. Look at Saturn as the cross over the crescent of the moon. Jupiter is precisely opposite. If you invert it and flip it, it's the crescent of the moon over the cross. Venus is the sun over the cross. The ancient symbol of Mars is the cross over the sun. Now they change it into an arrow. The Mercury is the crescent over the sun, over the cross. And people will say to me, yeah, but what about the modern planets? What about Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto? Well, check this out. You can see this here in just a second when I bring it up, because I have to switch screens here. Pluto and Neptune and Uranus are exactly of the combinations of the cross. Look at here on the screen. You can see Uranus is the 2 crescents of the moon bent outwards with the cross in the middle over the sun. Okay, Neptune is the crescent of the moon. Of course, this glyph I don't like as much. It's the crescent of the moon bent upwards over the cross. And Pluto is all 3. It's the sun over the crescent of the moon over the cross. So Pluto is raw transformative power. And here I'll show you a little bit better diagram.
Now, wasn't Pluto in play back in 1773 through the 76 period in the birth of the nation? And is that not correlative to the Sibley chart?
Well, I think Pluto has always been there, but yeah, Pluto always factors in major changes. I don't know about that particular one. I haven't really examined that, but
because don't we have Saturn and Pluto at the solstice, or the solstice, the winter solstice? Isn't that what it is, Saturn and Pluto?
No, the winter solstice this year is going to be Jupiter and Saturn.
And Saturn, okay.
Yeah, Jupiter and Saturn always
planets, and
Yeah, you're right. Well, Saturn and Pluto, you can see this is just a mundane chart, and this is a little easier to see. See the circle of the sun over the crescent of the moon over the cross. So Saturn and Pluto joined right when this thing really cut loose in January. January 12th, Saturn and Pluto conjoined. And I always said, within a few weeks, something traumatic happens. Well, what happened? The virus broke out. But it went AWOL, or you could say, or I shouldn't say AWOL, it went absolutely nuts out of the box with the media right when the Kalasarpa Yoga happened, meaning all the planets, including Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto, went in between the nodes. And of course, that was definitely on approximately January 25th. So this winter solstice, we have Jupiter and Saturn. It's a fascinating story. A lot of people know that Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto weren't discovered until the late 1800s, early 1900s. And so astrologers tend to assign Pluto is ruling Scorpio in the modern world, Uranus is ruling Aquarius, and Neptune is ruling Pisces. You can't do that in the ancient systems. In fact, Vedic astrology absolutely does not do that. And I am more of a traditional astrologer. I really believe the ancient zodiacs are correct. You can't put Neptune and Uranus and Pluto. Now, all the modern astrologers hate it when I say that, because they all run around and write books and they all claim and beat their chest that absolutely Pluto, we know it rules Scorpio, we know Aquarius rules Uranus, and we know Neptune rules Pisces. I absolutely find that that's not true. If you're using traditional interrogation astrology, electional astrology, or Vedic astrology, if you do that, you will break the old systems. So this is why they're referred to in the ancient world is the transcendentals. And there's many other planets. Like you'll talk to astrologers who use all kinds of asteroids. They use all kinds of shadow planets and lots and their mathematical points. Vedic astrology has that too. And people say, yeah, well, they just didn't know about it. Well, I don't know about that one because there's strong evidence that they did. They just didn't put them into the zodiacal structure because
so what about
Saturn.
This comet Atlas that's just coming.
Oh, that one's huge. I think that's another omen. All throughout history, they had paid great attention to the omens of asteroids and strong comets coming in, particularly comets and eclipses. So yeah, this one's huge. They say it's not that big. It's only a few miles across, but apparently the corona is larger than Jupiter.
Massive.
It's massive, like 3 times the size. I think this is an omen too. I really do. I think it's a big omen. What is it? Well, because I bet you're going to ask me that. What is that? I say
I was leading in.
You were leading. I think it's more positive than negative. And I'll tell you why. See, you're seeing what I'm doing here. This, the Lord of the Ninth is always the house of divine. And the moon is in the 9th house, trining the sun, Lord of the 10th. It doesn't come up like it's bad. No, it does not. Mm-mm. And, I was very concerned that there might be some war or some other crazy stuff that could happen. And there's a lot of people that are very worried about something happening in the Middle East still, particularly with China, Russia, and all this backing some of the more Eastern Bloc nations like Iran and Syria and all that.
Well, what's going on with Iran over there? I mean, they seem to be putting a lot of people down in the dirt from this
coronavirus.
Like it's coming from the virus. Is it just because they're a bunch of old, unhealthy guys, or is it? I don't know. It seems like it hit him pretty hard.
I think the numbers would be a lot higher if we weren't heeding what our health professionals were saying. I think the social distancing, I think the awareness that has been put out for us is because, this coronavirus is real. There are people who are really getting sick from it. I know I've got clients in New York. I've got clients in Japan I just talked to today. Belgium, there's a bunch of people that have it in Europe. England, I'm hearing, is fairly, we hear it on the news. So this is really real. Iran may be just this third world country that isn't heating. That's kind of like us back. And that's why probably 50 million people died on that pandemic back in, 1918, is people just weren't heating it. It was so colossal that afterwards they started wearing the masks. And that may be why Iran. I don't get that, and I hope I'm right about this. This chart does not say there's going to be any major outbreak of war. And let's hope that continues to be true.
I don't think, it would be it wouldn't be surprising, but it would be mind-boggling to me if in the middle of all this, obviously piggybacking on
yeah, right.
Excuse me, on what's going on and, bad actors and people trying to take advantage of it, that stuff's just going to happen. But it seems odd to me that anybody would try to launch anything that they would have a hope of having a lasting impact and change on for whatever reason that they would try to launch, some kind of attack or war. I think you would have to be really desperate, really stupid, or both to try to create something and piggyback, a type of war on top of this war that everybody.
Well, the U.S. has just really built up its forces, and now we've got.
God, what a powerhouse! Holy shit!
Yeah, and we've got all these supersonic missiles now with nuclear warheads. When you look at the United States Navy, and I'm not just saying that because we live in the United States. It's not a little better than the rest of the world. It's almost laughable. We've got, I think now close to 12 or 14 nuclear-powered aircraft carriers that are some bad mofos. These are huge. And the stuff they've got on them, I hear is particle beams. They've got I mean, these are literally nuclear power plants, let alone what they can do in propulsion. And they've got lasers and particle beams. And you look at the rest of the world, I mean, Russia has one aircraft carrier, one. And it's not even nuclear powered. China has one. I know they're working on a bunch. They have one, and it's turbine and gas powered. I mean, the only nuclear powered aircraft carrier alone that I think exists is France. And that's like a quarter or a half of the size of the aircraft carriers that the U.S. has. So the United States, in almost any category, is just superior, right, in terms of technology, sophistication, capabilities, et cetera, et cetera. And I know that Star Wars thing was put in place. And in fact, I've got clients I can't mention, but they have told me that they worked on it. And it's fully functional. And I'll just say, can you say Palo Verde nuclear power plant? I know that's one in Alaska. These things are definitely tied into this, and there is technologies that are out there. I think if it wasn't there, I think we would have a war. I think somebody would have tried it. I think the force is so overwhelming right now, in so many ways, that it's suppressing it. The real war is the money.
And they're about to just completely reset that. So
I think it's right around the corner. I think the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction's it.
I think, one of and you're not hearing a lot about it, but there's a few people, some good, solid, independent thinkers that I follow, are looking at this roll-up of the Fed into the Treasury as the single most important fundamental change to the financial, not necessarily the system, but the way in which the model works, because you had to get it out of the hands of those that it's been in for way too long, and the only way to do that was to change the ownership of the,
or at least the structure.
The ownership of the structure, right?
The same boys that are involved are still in the mix.
I think those guys, but what I also think too, I agree. I think those boys are still in play. But I think, the last gen or two of that whole group, I don't think they have the stomach for it. Maybe that's one way to put it. Maybe the old guys are just saying, you know what, screw it. We've had a nice run. We'd like to let go of the reins.
The ultimate monopoly.
Big enough now to be a serious. Yeah, and it's big enough now to be a serious pain in the ass to manage, and to try to keep our tentacles and our hooks and everything else in it. We've got more than enough to go do what we want to do. Let's let this thing transpire.
Let's hope that's the case. The only thing I can say is the astrology, astronomy, however you want to say it, I think it looks positive, even though a lot of people are fearful of losing their rights, et cetera, et cetera. That stuff's always been going on. I mean, if you go back 1,000, 2,000 years, human nature hasn't changed much. Though I would say
more ego.
Yeah, it's always been there. But I'm optimistic. I really do. I really believe we're all spiritual beings having a physical experience. I really do. And for those that don't believe that, I think we're going to find out that is true. I'm optimistic here that we're going to get through this, and we are going to come back better than ever. I really am. And the astronomy proves it. The Saturn-Jupiter conjunctions, when they rejoin in new triplicities, meaning earth, air, fire, and water cycles, and if anybody wants to study this, I've really looked at this in detail. There's actually astrology that is believed to go back to Enoch, which is the pre-deluge astrology. And again, I've got some interesting translations here that are critical translations that talk about where in the heck did all this astrology come from? Well, I really think it points back to the ancient world pre-deluge, and I really think it's divine. I think the Sefer Ratziel, which was from the archangel Ratziel, given to the original biblical Adam and Eve, points in that direction. Enoch is another one who later became the Egyptian Thoth, and of course the Hermes Trismegistus later. All of this points to some very ancient roots in the cycles of astronomy that earmark the changes in society. And the Saturn-Jupiter conjunctions were the real PowerPoints, even though Pluto is, and certainly we can go back through history, it was the Saturn-Jupiter conjunctions that formed in certain configurations, and particularly this one, I think, going in an air sign or starting the air triplicities is going to be an explosion of technologies par excellence. And even though we're going to look back and say, well, this was a rough time, it was, a lot of people may lose their current standings, but I think where we're going to end up is going to be a very interesting future. I really do. I think technology is going to get like the Jetsons. I really do. I want flying cars, man. I want a motorcycle fly. I want a flying motorcycle. That's what I want.
Yeah, I think
I want to be like Star Wars, cruising through those trees.
I think you're spot on. But I got to say,
well, I think the chart's spot on.
Yeah. Well, you're interpreting, what you're seeing in the charts, and
yeah. So I have to run, my friend, but because I've got to get up early, and I'm not doing really well, even though I may look like I'm okay. I'm not really feeling well.
You sound good. You look just about as good. But we've got a couple hours we just did. So
yeah, it's great.
There's more than enough here to put together for a show tomorrow. I'm go ahead.
Fun. I love your pictures. I love the pictures you found. That was great.
Yeah, I really like those, and it was just having some kind of context, because it's 102 years later. The only thing that's different is, the people were wearing different clothes.
Yeah, pretty much. The egos and the, perceptions of reality probably weren't that much different than today, other than the technology we have.
I mean, it's pretty amazing. And I think the reset, the re-leveling, the nominalization of all of this. I mean, you think about it. People that had jobs that were cush, there's a lot of question about whether they're going to have those same jobs.
Yep.
I've
had a lot of
questions they're using to produce things. It's all been, they're now used the stuff you and I use. And oh, by the way, Zoom is they've just gone ape.
Well, I bet
the usage in people.
Stock in that's got to have soared. Yeah.
And it's an American company, but all of the data goes through China.
Wow.
All the servers and the programmers
are
Chinese. So it's another interesting little data point.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be surprised if you see.
Well, one of the things I heard is that
of Zoom bring all that back over here.
This is what I think. There's a lot more depth to this whole event than I think we realize.
Yep.
The power structures are going to shift. That's what Pluto does. Pluto shifts the power. If you look at the glyph of Pluto, it's the sun over the crescent of the moon over the cross. It's raw power. That's why most astrologers equate Pluto to transformation. And even though people say, well, yeah, but Pluto is just a planetoid, it's not big enough to be a planet. And they've moved it now back into being a planet, and then they pull it back out. So they're all indecision as to what to do. The only thing I can tell you is, great guys, you can sit there and size up Pluto or de-size it all you want. My observations is it clearly is powerful in an individual's life. I've looked at it in location astrology. I've looked at it in many other configurations, and it clearly shows up. It's a powerful, powerful energy.
Well, there's nothing like having a powerful Pluto in your pocket.
Yeah, there you go. Well, we all got it somewhere. All right, my friend. Well, hey, we had a great time.
I enjoyed it as always.
Yeah.
बंदे मैं तो तेरे पास में, मैं तो तेरे पास में, मोको कहाँ ढूंढे रे बंदे, तेरे पास में रे बंदे मैं तो तेरे पास में ना तीरथ में ना मूरत में ना एकांत निवास में ना मंदिर में ना मस्जिद में ना कबे कैलाश में मैं तो तेरे पास में रे बंदे मैं तो तेरे पास में मैं भरत उपास में, नहीं प्राण में नहीं पिंड में, ना ब्रह्मांड आकाश में, मैं तो तेरे पास में रे बंदे, मैं तो तो तेरे पास में खोजी होए तुरंत मिल जाऊं, एक पल की तलाश में खोजी होए तुरंत मिल जाऊं, एक पल की तलाश में। कहत कबीर सुनो भाई साधो, मैं हूँ विश्वास में, मैं हूँ विश्वास में। मैं तो तेरे पास में बंदे, मैं तो तेरे पास में, मैं तो तेरे पास में, मैं तो तेरे